Okay, and yes, we are rolling.
We are rolling. Good evening,
Yes,
everyone.
let me go ahead and set this up, Harry. All right, so thanks to those that joined us, and anybody that may be watching this Zoom forum. My name is Sam Otero. I'm the producer, the owner at Nova Now TV, and of course Harry Jackson with us tonight, the host of Education Matters, and special guest tonight. We're going to start out with a conversation with Stacy Langton. And the topic of discussion, as we move from that portion of the evening into a community forum, is going to be the ongoing controversies that are surrounding certain specific books in Fairfax County Public Schools, and some potential we're looking for. We're going to be hearing from Harry discussing some of the issues that he has uncovered in his taking a look at the library processes. And we want to hear from a wide variety of folks that are going to be expressing their views, both pro and con, for and against certain books that we've been discussing, and maybe some of the policies as well. So all viewpoints are welcome here. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over the basic terms. I want everybody to understand we are not broadcasting this live. This isn't part of our television show. However, I'm certain there's going to be some valuable insights here, and we may go ahead and choose to use some portions of the event in further or future broadcasts. So by participating in this, please understand, I'll just read the disclaimer. The meeting is being recorded. It is not being put out live, but it is being recorded for possible future use in our regular news and commentary shows, and it's the sole property of the hosts of this event, may not be used in whole or part without express written permission. So by entering the meeting, you are giving Nova Now and E Squared Solutions, LLC, the right to use your image and voice in future broadcasts in perpetuity with no expectation of remuneration of any kind. Also, this is uncensored. We want you to be able to speak freely, say what you want to say and how you want to say it. And but you understand that due to the subject matter that's being covered, potentially somebody may find the commentary or the subject matter offensive and adult in nature. So understanding that, we're going to trust that everybody out there is going to self-moderate and they can handle themselves just fine. That said, we want the conversation to be civil, of course. So we're not going to I will be moderating, and we want to watch filibustering, and if tempers are there, I don't anticipate that happening though. So that said, all viewpoints are welcome. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to host of Education Matters, Harry Jackson, and I will moderate in the background. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Harry Jackson, Education Matters. So tonight's episode, we're going to talk about explicit books out in the FCPS library. And as Sam had mentioned out, we're just kind of delving into the discussion topic of sexuality education and we talk about the library inclusion policy. So why are we doing this? I'm going to cite the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization that when you are talking about sexuality education, it has the most impact when you have school-based programs, such as a library, that are complemented with the involvement of parents, such as those in the community, teachers, training institutes, and youth-friendly services are out there. So in my personal opinion, I don't really think there has been a lot of public or community discussion or debate on the issues or even coming to a resolution. And from having discussions with both sides, I think there's a lot of common ground, but it's a heightened environment. So Stacy, I'd like to say welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Okay,
great. So Stacy, let's go back in time. What got you involved into this issue? What did you find? What prompted you to come forth and speak at the school board meeting? Talk about what you found, why you did it. Talk about also what you've encountered in reaction to that. And then we'll follow up before we talk about your reaction to last night's event. You were at the school board. I'm going to ask you some tough questions from the other side, unless someone else in the community has some as well. But just to see, the defensible position, and then we'll talk about the purpose of the inclusion policy, and then we'll talk about the goals or the criteria that must be met for a book to be included into the FCPS library. So let's go into the background. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you involved into this issue?
Well, I have two sons that attend Fairfax High School, and I have 4 other children that are in private Catholic school. Early on in the school year, I think the school year had been underway for about 2 weeks, and I saw a story on Newsmax, and that story was about a school board meeting in Hudson, Ohio, and it was about a pornographic literature book that the kids in Ohio had been assigned, and it had some very explicit and graphic writing assignments that they were told. For example, they said something like, write a sex scene for a Disney movie that you wouldn't want your parents to see, and I was cooking dinner and thought, wow, that's kind of weird. What's that all about? But didn't think too much of it. And then a few days later, there was another story, and it was very similar. And this had to do with a school board meeting in Leander, Texas. And, this mother had taken a couple of books to the school board meeting, and she read aloud from the materials. And of course, it was very shocking. And at that point, I started to think, wow, like, what's going on? There's something going on here, because that's 2 of these types of stories in a row. And it made me start to think, do I need to look at my kids' school to see are these books in my kids' high school? And so I asked one of my sons, to bring me his laptop, because FCPS has school issued laptops. And so, we looked up the titles of those books that were mentioned, and sure enough, they were in the library. And I'm not going to do anything just by taking the word of somebody on the internet or some news story that I saw on television. I'm going to perform my own due diligence, which is what I did. And so we went and checked the books out of the library. And the thing about these 2 books is that when you see them for yourself in person, it's actually quite a bit more shocking than what you would be led to believe by the television broadcast about them. And that's because they can't broadcast the material. They can't show you on Newsmax or whatever news entity is covering this what we're really talking about. And the day I got those books and had them in my hands and looked at them, it kind of ruined my day because it's very shocking. It's not ambiguous at all. It is very, very X-rated. It's so extremely explicit. It's quite shocking. So at that point, I felt like, well, I'd like to think I'm a fairly involved mom, but I was totally unaware of this. I had never heard of such a thing before, and now I'm faced with it. It's quite a reality, and it's quite a slap in the face. And I thought, I probably should make other parents aware of this. I felt like I would be remiss as a parent if I did not make this known. And so I decided to go to the school board meeting, and I've never done that before. I didn't know what the procedures were. I didn't, had no idea. Apparently they had just instituted this lottery system, which the clerk told me had been done about a month prior, I think in July or August. And, they did the lottery because they were trying to make it more fair or whatever. I guess there had been some controversy with people kind of all speaking on the same topic or something like that. And I signed up, and the first time I signed up, I was on the waiting list. And that day on September 23rd, when I went, I did not know if I would get to speak or not because I was on the waiting list, and I got to speak. And so I read aloud and showed the images, and the board didn't handle it very well. Stella Pekarsky said, "Ma'am, there are children in the room." And I said, yes, yeah, that's my point, right? If this material is so disturbing to a public adult proceeding, then how much more damaging is that in the library in the presence of our children? So it was almost like a funny thing that happened. It was like Stella Pekarsky was making the case for me. But at that point, the outburst from her caused another outburst from Melanie Marin, and then, you know, the whole thing fell apart, and I never got to finish my time. They cut the mic and cut the feed, and the board fled the room and took a 20-minute recess. So that's kind of how it started and how it went. And I can assure you that when I went there that day, what happened was not how it went in my head. So, you know.
So I understand that it's caused a quite a backlash, a reaction, some of your actions within the community, a lot of anger. How has some of that anger manifested itself?
Well, I don't personally get subjected to the anger. So for my part, personally, the vast majority of the reaction I get is positive. People are extremely supportive of what I've done. Parents come to me, you know, all the time, everywhere I go, and say, thank you so much for your bravery. Thank you for your courage in doing what you did, because they know that that was a very nerve-wracking thing to do. It's always nerve-wracking, I think, to speak publicly. I think most people are nervous speaking at a setting like that, even if you're talking about an ordinary topic. And to do what I did and to just simply read aloud, I let the materials speak for themselves. And it's so pornographic and so rude, you know. I'm not in the habit of talking that way, and I certainly wouldn't say that in front of a bunch of strangers, a room full of, you know, a couple hundred strangers. So it was very nerve-wracking. But the only negative reaction, I'm sorry.
Well, we're all aware of like the press, and we know that there's been a lot of support for what you did in the community. But when I talk about negative reaction, has there been any repercussions to you or your family as a result of your activism?
Oh, you mean personally?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. So we went to the Department of Justice to do a little protest in response to Merrick Garland's October 4th memo, in which the Attorney General of the United States stated that school board members were in danger from school board parents, right? People like me who come to a school board meeting to have redress of a particular issue. And the NSBA basically called us domestic terrorists. I think they said that school board parent activities amounts to a form of domestic terrorism, which is of course ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong. I stood at a podium and I exercised my rights under the First Amendment. But what AG Garland's memo did was such a ridiculous overreach and very fundamentally un-American. We decided to have a protest at the DOJ on Sunday, October 17th. And the threats against my family started the very next day. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or what. It's a very strange thing. But yes, my family is experiencing threats, and it's against myself and my husband and, you know, my children, some of them by name, which is a very scary thing. And it is not yet resolved. So we have an ongoing, 2 separate law enforcement investigations into that. So we've paid a very heavy price. It's not a good place to live where you don't feel like you're safe because, you know, somebody out there might be wanting to hurt you because of something you said at a school board meeting.
So, all right, let's go. Let's peel back the layer there, unless we've got questions from the audience. So let's talk about like the reaction there. What is your opinion about sexuality education? Not sex ed, sexuality education does have a place in public education.
I'm sorry, were you trying to say that there's a difference between the two? Sex ed or sexuality education? I'm not sure what your question is.
Yeah, sexuality education, that was it came about in the 1980s. It was designed to reduce HIV infection rates in teenage pregnancies primarily.
Well, no, because I'm a child of the 80s, okay? I'm 52 years old, and I can tell you what sex ed was for my generation. And no, it wasn't anything about HIV, actually, because HIV kind of came into the later public awareness when I was already in high school, right? So it was right around 1984, 1985. I think that was when Rock Hudson was probably the first person of any notoriety or celebrity or whatever to come out and say he had AIDS. So no, we didn't get, there was no sex ed regarding sexually transmitted diseases or anything like that for me. What sex ed was for me actually happened in the 5th grade. And I remember it very well. And they took the boys into one room and the girls into another room. And they just kind of explained, like, you know, how biology was going to work, that, you know, that like the girls were going to have their periods. And then I don't know what they told the boys, but that was the extent of it. Right. So it probably was very clinical. It wasn't anything like, I can't even imagine what the sex ed classes are like in high school right now. I don't know what they're doing.
I was kind of going towards like the sexuality education. That's its intent is to reduce risky sexual risk behaviors. I'm sorry. Yeah, risky sexual behavior. You know, for example, instruction, how to use a condom, how to have safe sex practices.
Oh, well, that's after my time then. Okay, so
what's your position? That's what we talk about sexuality education. What's your position on sexuality education? Are you a prude? Is basically what I'm asking.
Am I a prude? Yeah, wow, thanks for that. No, I'm not a prude. Obviously,
okay.
I think you know, would want kids at the high school level. Now, when you're talking about that specifically, right, you're talking about things like, you know, sexually transmitted disease or birth control and things like that. That's not something where I would be okay with them going down to like lower levels, lower grades, right? Because that is strictly a high school issue, I would say. I quite honestly don't know what the current state of sex ed is in Fairfax High School, because this is our first year back at Fairfax High School. And that's just kind of a result of the timing of my children's age and then the whole COVID thing, because school was shut down for a year and then school was only online last year. So I don't know what they teach them, but I mean, I don't have any particular objection to that sort of thing in general terms, right? If they're saying like, oh, you know, be safe and don't do this or don't do that, whatever, right? That's common sense. So that's not what my issue is about.
Okay. Well, no, I'm glad. Thank you for explaining that. And the data would support you when you look at CDC data. Talk about half of young adults ages 15 and 19 become sexually active between ages of 15 to 19. So, all right. So let's talk about what some of the critics have said, that at one school board meeting, there was a mention that that their material would talk about sexuality education with inclusion is being held to a higher threshold than heterosexual material that's in the book, and that this is creating such a buzz because it's gay material. So let's go into the accusation. Are you a homophobe?
Well, no, of course not. I'm not a homophobe because I'm the adult child of a gay parent. So I lived it, and I lived it before it was sort of okay to live it, right? Like now, everyone is very desensitized to what that means. So you can say now, in this generation, in this time, that you have a gay parent and nobody would bat an eye. Nobody would think anything of it. It's quite normal, right? Let me tell you something. In the 80s, when I was in high school, that was not the case. That was a very painful, like, secret to keep as a child, because, you know, my mom was in the closet. And it wasn't something that was well known. I mean, obviously, you know, everyone in my family knew, of course. And I think all of our close friends knew. And there were people in our town who knew, because, you know, certain things get out, people talk, whatever. But it wasn't like it is now. You know what I mean? Like, she couldn't be out, so to speak. And that part of her life didn't come until, you know, probably, I would say sometime maybe in the mid 90s, where she could just, you know, be out, I guess you could say, and it wasn't a big deal anymore. But when I was a kid, it was painful. So at any rate, the criticism that has come only from the LGBTQ community, only from them, that I'm a homophobe, it was absurd to me, right? Because I knew this about myself and my life, and I was like, well, that's dumb, because they don't even realize who they're talking to, right? That's an absurdity to say that to the adult child of a gay parent. You're a homophobe. I'm like, not me. No, because I love my mom, and she was a good mom. So it's never been about that. And that's one of the things that was very painful to endure, because my family and I knew that there would be an appropriate time to talk about that, but it's just not immediately the day after it became a national news story. And so I had to endure that criticism for a good amount of time with, you know, everybody going, she's a homophobe, she's anti-gay, she hates the gays. No, 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 no. It's never been about that. And I've said that in literally every single interview I've given. I said it on day one, on September 24th, to Hannah Natanson of the Washington Post. I said, it isn't about the gender of the characters having sex in this book. It isn't about the sexual orientation of the characters having sex in these books. I don't care about that. Harry, I said it to you. Hey, you happen to know a hetero porn graphic novel or whatever? Bring it to me. I will be happy to take it to the school board and read it aloud. And if somebody had, you know, if that was what was brought to my attention in the first place, I would have gone to the school board on September 23rd and said exactly all the same words I said in the same way, because it's about the fact that it's pornographic. It's not about, you know, the gender or the orientation. And what's even worse, it's about the fact that there is pedophilia depicted. And that's a more serious thing even than just regular pornography.
So, and another question before we go to the question from the audience here. So when we talk about another criticism is that they're saying that you are cherry picking material from this community. I've looked at, there are other books on the hetero side that have, that go there between, we talk about pedophilia, Bluest Eye, Beloved. I'm looking right now in the library, Game of Thrones by George R. Martin. I've read those books. He has ancient scenes in there where it's with girls as young as 12 in some of those books there. Are you going to, do you intend to target on the hetero side as well with your activism?
Oh, sure. I mean, like I said, I could do that. Somebody just kind of needs to, you know, point it in my direction or something, because I haven't read those books that you're talking about. Like, I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. I've never seen the television show. I've never read the books. I did see the beauty of social media. I had to join Twitter after, you know, I went to the school board because it became a national news story overnight. And the beauty of Twitter is that it gives you a way to interface with the public and also with the press. And so I am constantly being given materials. And I actually got a note from somebody on Twitter the other day, and they said, you should take a look at Stephen King's novel, It, that there is apparently some very graphic scene of a child orgy. I'm just like, what? Because I haven't read this book, okay? And that it's well known, right? That this is, it's just, it has a reputation for, this is like the sickest thing ever put into print, and it's by Stephen King. And that it's also, I believe, some sort of child murder sequence and child orgy. So yeah, I could certainly go, and I bet it is in the library at Fairfax High School. I mean, I don't know, they probably have more than one Stephen King novel. And like you said, Game of Thrones. Yeah, I'll be happy to take that up with the school board. It's not, I'm an equal opportunity porn opponent. You're muted. His mic is muted. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
my mic. All right. Actually, you are. It is in the high school libraries.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
It's in there. And I guess, well, let me ask a question from the audience here. Have your children been harassed at their school as a result of your activism?
No, not at all. And that was something that, you know, every day when I would pick up my kids, my boys from the high school, you know, when we would get in the car, I would say, how'd school go today? Is everything okay? Is anybody bothering you or giving you a hard time? And they said, nope, they were fine. Nobody said a word. No teachers have bothered them. And I think my son, one of them came home one day and said, oh, this one boy finally said something to me. And he said, he asked me if my last name was Langton. And I said, yes. And the boy said, oh, your mom, I see her on TV all the time. That's really cool. So it was just funny because, like, you know, that's the mind of a teenage boy, I guess. Your mom's on TV. That's cool. So no, they haven't been harassed at all.
All right. And I guess going down there, since we're looking at the Virginia gubernatorial campaign with McCullough, Do you have a problem with Maya Kobabe's genderqueer book because you are a racist?
I'm a racist?
No, are you a racist? I got it.
Am I a racist? Oh,
I'm asking all the, I asked, I talked to the critics, you know, the other side.
no, I'm not a racist. Definitely. I don't know what genderqueer has to do with race because, you know, whatever, it's a
The
white
author's
woman.
African-American, so she's African.
No, she's not.
She's
Oh,
not?
no, she
Someone
is
said
not.
she was.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Harry, where you been? Maya
Okay.
Kobabe is a 43-year-old white woman. Okay.
Ah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, but they
no, that's why I was like,
it
how
out.
am I a racist now? Wait a minute, that's a new one. Nobody's
right.
calling me racist yet, but okay, you're
Well,
the first.
So- Okay.
No, Maya Kobabe is white.
Right.
Jonathan Evison, the author of Lawn Boy, is white.
Mhm.
Now, the two new books that I brought to the school board meeting last night, one of those authors is African American, and
So
that's
all boys
George
are-
M. Johnson. He is
Yes.
an African American homosexual man. And then the other author, Adam Rapp, Adam Rapp is white. So all white authors at this point, except for George Johnson.
All right, so George Johnson, I know he has a scene in here where he's depicting an encounter between an 18-year-old and a 13-year-old in that.
Well,
in that
himself, it's
book.
himself. It's a
Himself, yeah.
memoir. Yeah, it's a memoir. He tells the story in the first person. And he gives the account of him being molested. He was forcibly sodomized by his 18-year-old cousin, Thomas, who is now dead. And he says in the book, you know, that he has a lot of anger towards this cousin because of the fact that he molested him. But there's a double shame, he says, because not only is it that it was homosexual, but because he said they were blood related. And so therefore it was doubly shameful to him because it was incest. And I posted all 7 pages of that description on my Twitter. So you can go and look at it and read it for yourself on Twitter. And it's very, very graphic. So that's disturbing because, you know, I think you could, as an author, tell your memoir and talk about if you were molested, which is a horrific crime. And obviously his cousin was a predator, but I don't think you have to do it in such a completely graphic way, because when you read it, to my mind, to me, it almost has the effect of that predator getting to reoffend and perpetuate his abuse on every reader who reads that 7 pages.
Okay, so let's go. So you've addressed that. Here, let's go to the other question, the other criticism, that you're taking the books. And for those of you that are joining us, if you have questions that you would like to ask, go ahead and put them in the chat because I don't want to leave anything out. The other criticism is saying that you're taking these books out of context. You mentioned 7 pages of All Boys Aren't Blue. Lawn Boy. We can talk about that. Within that, reading this book, we're talking about a passage that is 3 pages.
Well, there's actually a couple of different passages in Lawn Boy. He mentions it 3 different times. There's a passage near the end of the book where he essentially threatens to blackmail the other boy, Doug Goebel. And this is happening, you know, in the present time when they're both adults at that moment. You know, he says, I'll tell everyone, you know, what you did to me. And they're shouting at each other in the street, like they're having an argument in public on a public street. And, you know, there's some old woman nearby who witnesses the argument. And, you know, he shouts a little louder and the woman, you know, reacts to that. And so he's kind of making that threat to the character that is telling the story, says, you know, I will tell, because he knows that that piece of information would harm Doug Goebel's reputation now as an adult, right? To know that he essentially molested another child when he himself was a child. And then there's 2 other passages in Lawn Boy where the main character discusses that incident of, you know, molestation. And it's unfortunate because of the way it's written. It's sort of written like a flashback, right? It's like he's reflecting upon it and he's telling the story to his friend at a bar one night. And the way it's written, it's very confusing. And so that's why I think in the beginning, the first time you read it, you actually think he's talking about the 10-year-old performing oral sex on an adult. But what he really meant was it's that the 10-year-olds did the sex together, right? When they were both 10-year-olds at summer camp.
Okay, so that doesn't meet the threshold of pedophilia. How about, let's talk about genderqueer, Mia Kobabe. There's a passage there, you mentioned pedophilia. We're talking page 135. It appears that you have an asexual 15-year-old that's fantasizing based on Plato's Symposium, but it does have a depiction there of what appears to be an adult male fondling a child. But I guess the question is like, are these passages within context of the material? Can you hear me?
We lost you. You froze up for a minute there. So I'm sorry. I lost you when you were trying to describe, you said Plato's Symposium, and then I lost you.
Yeah, it was based on Plato's Symposium. So I guess the question is that, I mean, is this blow up being taken as is this making a mountain out of a molehill over a couple of passages that people are taking completely out of context? And if it's not, what's the risk to, why are parents concerned? Why are you having parents supporting you just saying these books should be banned, or should they be banned, or should they be edited as they did with Huck Finn before it was pulled out of libraries?
Well, I don't know if you guys have the ability to show the images, or if you're doing share screen with the images, because I think it is important, right, to understand what the image is and what we're talking about. So there's the image, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. That is an adult bearded man crouched down with an erect penis, and he is engaged in a sex act fondling the erect penis of a male child, right? That's what is shown. Now, what's more disturbing is that if you look at the entirety of this particular panel on the book, on Maya Kobabe's book, okay, what you will find is that she describes on this page how this is her favorite fantasy, right? So there's the entire panel. I don't know if that's going to show up. There you go. And what she says
Can I just ask like what book we're discussing? I came in a little late.
Okay, we're talking about Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe, and it's a graphic novel, okay?
Oh,
and
let me chime in real quick here, because we are starting to see some activity. People are coming into the room. So those that are just joining us, we are recording this and we will make it available on the website in full. But just to catch up very quickly, Harry had set up the show, or set up the interview, and then we've been talking with Stacy Langton here for about the past half an hour, getting the background of her involvement in this and some of the concerns. So we're not going to rehash all that and go back right now. She's going over some of the graphic images. If you wish to speak, we're here for you. We want to hear your opinion. So if you wish to speak, say so in the chat, please. And I'm going to go ahead and moderate this. And I believe here in a few minutes, right, Harry, we're going to go ahead and open this up to the room. Yes.
Yeah.
And all opinions are welcome. And we're not filtering this or censoring this. So you can speak your mind and feel free to do so. Go. Stacy, please continue.
Okay. So I just want to explain, if you can see, I don't know if this will work.
We can see it.
The entirety of the panel, Maya Kobabe is telling you that she first learned how to masturbate at age 11 by reading Alison Bechdel's book, Fun Home. And then she says, later, my favorite masturbation fantasy, and this is her, she's sitting here, she's masturbating, and she's thinking about her favorite fantasy. Her favorite sexual fantasy for masturbation purposes is gay male pornography. And she explains how in a prior page in the book that she buys gay porn. Okay?
Same.
Excuse me?
Like that.
I think we're having some kind of a malfunction.
No, it was somebody just trolling.
No, that's my fantasy too.
Okay,
but
hey, good for you. If you like gay porn, that's fine. But I think
folks, stop, please. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to maintain some order here and decorum. So if you wish to speak, as I said, please say so in the chat and we will give you the floor, but we're not going to interrupt one.
you're going to have to mute everybody and have them raise their hand.
They are. Everybody is muted. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Stacy. Please
All
finish
right,
your
so-
thought.
Right. So what I was trying to say is that the thing that's very disturbing about that overall panel, it's not just the fact that it depicts an image of actual pedophilia. It is an image of sex of an adult with a child. That's the definition of pedophilia. But there's an extra layer to this that's more disturbing to me, which is that we have a biological female author who is talking about the thing that gets her off is gay male porn. But then it's not even just gay male porn. She's actually getting off to gay pedophilia porn, right? That's very disturbing.
So that's where the line's being drawn, where it's between, it's not the gay sex, it's the gay sex between the two individuals there. Now let's talk about this. So like I said, this is an open forum. So we have someone ask a question. Some of the arguments submitted in support of the books have objected that they promote the development of healthy sexuality of other groups. What are your views on that argument?
I think these books are not promoting healthy sexuality in any way, shape, or form, because unfortunately, when I looked at genderqueer the first time, the way the characters are drawn, it's kind of hard to even figure out what you're looking at, because some of the oral sex pictures, it looks at first glance like it's gay, like homosexual. It looks like two boys, but then when you look at it for a moment, you realize, oh, okay, wait a minute. One of the characters is wearing a sports bra, so that's not a boy. But then there's a scene where she's actually fantasizing that she has a real penis. So there's two different images. There's one of her where it's a flesh and blood penis, because she's envisioning that for herself, and she's, getting oral sex with a real penis, but she's female. And then there's another image where she is now showing you what the reality was, which is she's not getting real sex with a real penis because she doesn't have one. She's getting it with a sex toy, and it's a strap-on dildo. Sorry. So it's just, the whole thing is this, there's nothing healthy in this. And we're talking about age of appropriateness, right? If you want to look at material like that when you're 18, it's a free country, you can do that. But you're talking about in our schools and in our secondary schools, which have middle school students. So that's something that is accessible to 12-year-olds. And that is not promoting healthy sexuality, especially for children as young as 12.
Okay, so we have a question from the floor. Do correct me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Elvina has a question for you from the floor. Elvina, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I feel like your argument is coming off a little bit anti-LGBTQ, and I feel like the book seems like it does have some healthy sex practices, because it's like people go through that in middle school too. And I feel like seeing it in a book would be helpful to some kids. Obviously not like 5-year-olds, but like in middle school, I feel like
what?
I feel like the stuff that the main character was going through.
Well, I'm sorry, be specific. People go through what? Hello?
Oh, sorry,
Did you
my mic. Sorry.
That's fine.
People go through what? I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Be specific. People go through what?
Well, people go through stuff with their sexuality and their gender, like who they are, trying to figure out who they are. And I don't know, I feel like you were saying weird things, like you thought they were men, but they were women.
Have you seen the images in the book?
Yeah, I saw the images that you just showed.
Well, that's the that's the pedophilia image. That one in particular, it's very clear they're both boys. I'm referring now to the images of Maya Kobabe herself having sex, right? And if you have not seen those images, I mean, I can hold them up and show them to you. And
Yes,
this
that
is
would be
why
great.
I said the way they're drawn, the first time I saw these particular images, okay, this looks like two boys. I thought at first this is homosexual, right? Because those look like boys, okay? So it takes you a minute to process this and see, okay, wait a minute. No, that's actually a girl because she's wearing a sports bra. So this is a female, right? But it looks like two boys. And so if I'm a 52-year-old woman, and I can't figure out what I'm looking at because of the way these characters are drawn, and it looks like two men or boys, I guess, teens having sex, what do you think the capability of understanding is for your average 12-year-old?
Honestly, I feel like with kids these days and the internet, their understanding is going to be pretty well. I feel like a lot of kids nowadays do kind of know their sexuality. And looking at that image, I can very clearly tell those are two lesbians. Easily.
Oh, how old are you?
I'm 19.
Right, so you're an adult.
Yeah, exactly. But I would have known at that age too.
No, I disagree. Okay. My
How
mother
do you
was a
disagree?
lesbian. My mother was a lesbian. Okay. I bet your parents are straight. I can tell you definitively, when I was 11 or 12 years old, I would not have been able to look at those images and figure out those were lesbians. And my mom was a lesbian. So
I can one up you there. I am a lesbian.
well, this isn't about you. I don't have any interest in your sexual orientation.
Okay, you
So,
brought up how you said your mom was lesbian. How was that relevant to the conversation?
because everyone
Alvina,
like
I got
you,
this.
the people
Oh,
in your community are saying I'm anti-LGBTQ because I don't want pornography in the library. It isn't about you being a lesbian. It isn't about my
I
mother
never said
being a
it was.
lesbian.
But
It's
you're the one
about
that brought up.
pornography, full stop. There's a period at the end of that sentence. It's about pornography.
Okay, let me stop everybody for one moment. Elvina, I'd like to ask you a question. Would that be okay?
That would be fine.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you for joining and thank you for speaking up. Would you hold that image back up?
Yeah.
Harry and I had a rather interesting conversation with somebody last night, and there's a couple things that I wanted to address, but taking a look at this now, my question is pretty simple. Irregardless, let's remove your perception of what you think you're looking at in terms of the person's depicted there, their chosen identity, their biological sex, whatever your interpretation of any of that might be, okay? The fact of the matter is, it is a clear depiction of, hold that back up, right? Whether it's a strap-on and that is a lesbian, two lesbians or not, or it is a depiction of biological males going at the act, either way, just remove that for a minute. That depiction, Elvina, in your mind, you're saying it is helpful and constructive to have that in a school library where anybody across the board can see it. And all I'm asking you is that your position? Yes or no?
I'm not necessarily saying that we should show kids pornography, but if it's going to be this is like in like a middle school, right?
Yeah.
And Robson Secondary was available.
Yeah, we have several middle schools in the district that it's in. Yes, there's like 5 middle schools it's in.
Okay, so middle school, like 6th grade to 8th grade. Those kids are looking at that stuff anyways. And
but no, ma'am, let me
God.
stop you, please. I asked you a very simple question. Those images, irregardless of what you think they depict, they are a very, very explicit sexual act. My question was, do you believe that that is appropriate to have in public school libraries? That's it. It's a simple yes or no question. And then you can elaborate.
I think it's fine.
You think
Right.
think
I mean,
that's-
she did.
Okay.
No, just a minute, Sam. I mean, to be fair, Elvina did admit it's a pornographic image. And so now she's saying, yes, she's
That
okay
that's
with that.
fine.
So she's saying
Right.
she's okay with having pornography available to middle schoolers. I'm sorry, but that is what I disagree with. I do not agree with having pornography available to middle schoolers. And regardless of what your opinion on it is, Elvina, and mine, it doesn't matter because it's against the law, right? We have federal laws and we have state laws against pornography in the presence of minors.
Let me interject here. Okay. So the purpose of the library collection policy is to provide students with access to a variety of resources to support their personal interests, information needs, literary development, and
Harry,
academic
can you
growth.
clarify what you're talking about for those that just?
I am talking about the library inclusion policy that is in Fairfax County Public Schools. Okay, there are two tenets. Okay, the first one is to provide students with access to a variety of resources and support their personal interests, information needs, literary development, and academic growth. I think this is where a lot of parents are in uproar about this, because how does this support academic growth? Now, I think on the other side, we could talk about the second development is to ensure that every student is able to find books to connect with in their library, although every book may not connect with every student. So, and I know that we have one person who wants to take the floor, and we'll get to them. So we'll get to them.
Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna go to Crystal after you.
Now, those are the two purposes of it, and I think this is where the two sides are conflicted. Now, we talk about putting a material in the library. It has to meet one of the three goals. It has to meet one of these thresholds. It has to enrich and support the Fairfax County Public Schools program of studies and the Virginia Standards of Learning. If it doesn't meet that, you have to ask the question, does that book meet that standard, yes or no? And then the second is, does it encourage and support informational and recreational reading, viewing, or listening, and help students develop the skills necessary to become lifelong learners, which I think that might be debatable on this forum. And the third, does it meet the information needs of students and faculty, taking into consideration diverse interests, abilities, backgrounds, reading levels, key word here, maturity levels, home languages, and student extracurricular activities. So it has to meet yes to any one of those three questions for it to be deemed acceptable within a public school library. So I guess the question, for Alvin is that, and that, I know I kind of read that a little bit fast, it should meet one of those three criteria, and I think we can have that discussion. Does that material meet yes to one of those goals? And did the Fairfax County school system, when they're in the review, did they get it right? Alvin, do you have any other questions before there's another person who brought up who wanted to have the floor. I wanted to get to Crystal.
Well, Elvina, you spent some time with us.
Yeah,
let's go ahead and
yeah.
Elvina, if you'd like to go ahead and chime in on that,
maybe we could take another question from somebody else. Give someone else the floor.
Yeah, let's see what Crystal has to say.
Let's see what you have to say.
Crystal,
you have the floor.
Okay, my primary concern is when you mentioned the pedophilia, because I think above all else, that's my main concern. So I want to know so is there a pedophilia in this book? That's what I'm asking. Like, can you show me?
Did you join us late? Did you miss the image? I mean, I can show it again if you want. Is that what he's asking me?
Can I ask a clarification?
Yeah, ask for
clarification here, Crystal. Crystal, are you asking, Crystal, are you asking what Stacy's criteria is for pedophilia?
Yeah, I'm asking, is there an image of pedophilia in this book? Like, does it say this is pedophilia? Or what?
You want to see it again? So this is a bearded adult male, and he's kneeling with an erect penis in front of the male child, and he is fondling his erect penis. They are engaging in sex.
And how is this a child? Does it say?
Well, yes, it does. Do you know what Plato's Symposium is? So in Plato's Symposium, the adult men of that time, they took boys as slaves, and they were sex slaves. And this was part of their culture, okay? So pedophilia was actually enmeshed in the fabric of Greek culture. And that's what Plato's Symposium is about. She's discussing this book. So
Mhm.
this is, and you can see this is a boy because he's very small. His penis is very small. He's half the size of the man who's kneeling before him. And there's, you know, him with his normal sized genitalia. But you have to know what Plato's Symposium is about, right? That's what she's referencing. And that's what the culture at that time did. The Greek men of Plato's Symposium had little boy sex slaves. So maybe read some Plato.
Okay, thank you for letting me know about that. That was my main concern.
Sure.
And I think if it has that, I think, I don't know, it does make me concerned to have this in a public library.
Right. And the thing about it, like I said, it's not just that there's that pedophilia element and that image specifically, which is a very graphic image, but it's also that the author is saying this is what she likes to masturbate to. She likes to masturbate to pedophilia, homosexual sex. I mean, I find that very disturbing, right? Because I think most people agree in this world, there is no greater crime than child rape, right? There, like, can we all agree on one thing here? Like, even in the gay community, can we all agree pedophilia is the worst crime there is? And this
Yes.
author,
Yeah.
Maya Kobabe, is saying, I like to get off on child rape. That's literally what's in this book.
Yeah, well, I have to agree with you there. Like this
Yeah.
book, I feel like if it has that, and that's like if that's a reference to Plato, then no, I don't think that book should be any, if, because what I'm getting is that this author is a pedophile. That's what I'm getting from this. And
Right.
but I feel like during this entire conversation, you have made many unnecessary comments that were not related to your concern of pedophilia and of children. It seems like you're more concerned with the children's confusion, like they wouldn't be able to understand what sex is or people's gender. Because I feel like those were such unnecessary
No,
rude
it's
comments.
not about that, right?
But you
There's two
brought that up.
things at issue here. It's about pornography. What is pornography? Let's go back to the beginning, right? We need to probably understand basic terms in order
I'm
to
talking
understand
about your
each other.
offensive comments.
I didn't say an
if it
offensive
makes
comment. I
Stacey-
said
I
I
am
object to
offended.
pornography.
Guys, hold on,
I believe Crystal
hold
has
on.
the
I'm
floor,
gonna
so
mute,
Stacey,
I'm
if you
gonna
could let her
mute,
talk.
I'm gonna mute. Okay, guys, just please listen. All right.
Yeah.
Crystal, if you would, very specifically, or as best as you can recall, what specific comments are you referring to? And then we'll give Stacey a chance to rebut. Go ahead.
I'm referring to when she was talking about the scene in the book where it was it was someone wearing a sports bra. And I think, I know Elvina said she said it was lesbians, and then Stacey, you weren't sure. But yeah, it just came off as very rude. And I think this was more of a depiction of someone who was transgender, because often transgender men will wear like binders that
But
like
she's not a
flatten their
man.
breasts.
It's not,
Okay.
okay. Maya Kobabe
Can I finish my sentence?
explains, okay.
Yes, go ahead.
The book is titled Gender Queer, so I'm seeing this as like a non-binary person. So who knows? Like, I just think your concern with their genitals and their gender is inappropriate. And I think a lot of kids these days are pretty aware and open about that kind of stuff, especially like LGBT kids who would probably be the people reading this. They would already understand that. And I just think, like, I understand why you're concerned about this, because you don't want children to be exposed to porn. And I think there's ways of depicting sex in healthy ways, like in an educational way to children. But I do have problems with this book. I haven't read it. I don't know what the message is, but I see the problems. But some of your comments have just been so unnecessary. And I think it does reveal some of your bigotry. I'm going to be honest, as a transgender woman, I feel that way.
Crystal, thank you for the insight. I think this is an education session for everyone in the room here.
Yes, thank you, Crystal.
So then I guess
Right, so I'd like to comment because
Yeah, go ahead,
I
if you
think
would, Stacey.
she just called me a bigot. So I
Yes.
think I absolutely should respond to that. So what you said, Crystal, was that because I was confused the first time I saw these images in Maya Kobabe's book, that makes me rude. No, Crystal, I'm telling you, I was confused. That's not rude. I'm not saying it to offend anybody. I was confused. That's it. That's a fact. The pictures are apparently, I mean, this gets confusing because, you know, you're using different words for different things, right? So Maya Kobabe is a biological female who identifies as neither gender. So I understand that term to be known as non-binary. So the other gal that talked to me, who I think her name was Elvina, she said she's a lesbian. So she said when she saw the images, what she sees was two lesbians having sex, right? And what I saw when I saw it the first time, like, just, and I'm saying this is just for like the first couple of split seconds, right? I look at that and I go, oh, it's two boys, right? And it's just kind of because like their hair was short or whatever. And then when you process it, your brain processes the image for a few seconds, and then you realize things like the details, right? Like the clothing. And I didn't say, oh, the character's wearing a sports bra to be rude. Like, you are being extremely highly sensitive if you think that's what I'm saying. I'm stating a fact, right? This is how my brain processed this photo. Or it's not a photo, it's a illustration. I noted then there's a sports bra on this person. So then my brain goes, oh, okay, wait, it's not two males. It must be a girl, because the girl wears a sports bra, right? Like, why do girls wear sports bras? Well, we wear sports bras because we have breasts, right? And when you exercise, you don't want your boobs bouncing, so you wear a sports bra. So do you see what I'm saying? I'm not slighting or against the trans community, and it's not anti. I'm merely explaining to you, this was my thought process the very first time I ever looked at this image. Now, when you sit with it for, you know, a little bit of time, then you can go, oh, okay, I get it now. Okay, it's essentially what Elvina said. It's two lesbians. Because when you look at it a little bit more, then you see those little tiny straps that were drawn on the middle panel, so you realize have the equipment to do what they're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. And we want to go ahead. I believe Elvita would like to come on. And what I would like to do, I would like to just point out and go back to my original point, and regarding even Crystal's thought as well. I think we can get lost in the minutia here and on these details as to who we think this is depicting and what we believe is right or not right, or what we think we're looking at. And we can take offense, we can not take offense, all of that. But irregardless, it goes back to the fact that it is a very explicitly sexual act that is being depicted. So the question that I would go back to again, and some of you have already answered, that you see that as pornographic in nature. So regardless of whether it's a trans person or a gay person or a straight person wearing a strap on, whatever, is that appropriate for a middle school? And I believe for me, I mentioned Harry and I had a really interesting conversation.
Well, before we get there, Crystal has a quick reply.
Yes, go ahead. And then
sorry
I promised Elvina that we'd bring her in too. So Crystal, real quick, go ahead, and then we're going to get back.
Sorry if it feels like I've gotten off topic. It's
no,
just
not at all. This is good.
Stacy says she's not trying to offend anyone, which I appreciate, but I don't feel that is genuine. I feel offended, and I think, you know, I'm like, you can't deny that. I am offended. It doesn't matter your intent. And I think, you know, we can all agree we do not want this book in the library because it depicts pedophilia. But I don't understand. It seems like sorry, I have to make this about Stacy because she is the one who brings up their gender and sexuality. And she is the one, it seems like she's more angry about that than the pedophilia, which is what really is irking me. Like, she's not concerned that it's porn. It seems she's more concerned that it depicts LGBT people. And she can say no, but that is how I feel. And yeah, I just feel concerned that someone like this is the person representing, I don't know if she's part of some group or something, but I feel concerned that someone with these type of beliefs is being the representative of this discussion, if that makes sense, that she's leading it.
I would like to address that briefly.
Thank you, Chris.
I think I lost part of the audio. I think I lost part of your audio,
Yeah,
Crystal,
Stacy, I
but
believe
I think I
something's
heard you say was, I don't know,
Stacy,
doing something.
something's going on your end, because everything else in here in the studio is fine. So I believe if you're having trouble hearing and you're cutting out on us too, why don't you take a second, jump out, jump back in. Harry, go ahead and elaborate.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go back to Stacy. And then
You're clear again now. I can hear you. I lost the audio for a minute. I can hear you now.
You're freezing up here. So just jump out and jump back in. Harry, go ahead.
Okay. Crystal, to address what you're saying, I mean, you're talking about as somebody, the voice of a movement, and you did join us a little bit late. We did ask Stacy about a lot about her background. I mean, if you're trying to address, some of the criticism, is it bigoted? Is she bigoted or a prejudice against LGBTQIA+? I think let's talk about from like a parental perspective. A lot of parents, I've talked to a lot of parents about these books, and it's what I hear as a common theme is that it's not one thing that if you see something that's inappropriate and they look at the books here and do the review, it's another thing in the current environment where there's a doubling down on the books, right? And there's no real community input or discussion or like this forum. I think this is probably the only forum that's ever happened where you actually have like parents, in the room, members of the community, they're talking about the books, addressing specific concerns. You're talking about, you mentioned with Lawn Boy there, Stacey brought up 3 passages. I looked at genderqueer. I could only see, I saw a few that were in there that I'd be like, okay, how does this, and then I look at the library policies, like how does it align with it? But any insensitive speech, however unintended, is not hate speech. So there's no intent, there is no intent for harm. I just wanted to just interject with that. Now we had Elvina waiting to join us. Elvina, you have the floor. You wanted to address the question earlier.
Yeah, I was just what were you wanting to clarify? I saw in the chat it was like, would you like to clarify?
Oh, you said you are. You just made a brief comment that said you are, but I didn't know what that meant.
Oh yeah, sorry. I want to say I completely agree with everything that Crystal is saying. That's kind of what I was trying to get across, like that everything she was saying seemed kind of like offensive, like in the way she was saying them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I feel like the way she's coming off is very she's very defensive, and that is also not a good sign, because I feel like when someone gets defensive, it means we're saying something true. And I also want to say that I did not know that there was the pedophilia aspect in that book, and I don't want that. That should not be in the library. But I think the healthy sex acts are okay to have, as long as if it's not pedophilia, like that's definitely not okay.
So clearly you don't believe that truth is a subjective thing, correct? That's what I'm hearing from your.
Yes.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then could somebody on Stacy's side of the aisle, so to speak, or some of the folks, the protesters that were there listening to you and Crystal discuss your offense to what and your painting of Stacy, regardless of what she's saying she is and her upbringing, painting her broadly or very specifically as a bigot and being offended by what she's saying, could they not take that as, well, you're saying it and I'm taking offense to it, therefore it's true. That's a sign that what they're saying is true. So we can bounce those semantics back and forth. And we saw this last night. And Harry, I wanted to mention this very briefly, because another word that has been flying about, and I saw the chants and I listened to the chants, we're hearing on the right side of the aisle, that these are leftist, Marxist ideologues, you know, a lot of the name calling. On the other side of the aisle, they're homophobic, right-wing fascists. So, you know, one of the things that concerns me as a grown man, as an educator with very strong beliefs, is that we get very lost in the reeds and slinging mud at one another. And are we really truly listening? We're so concerned with labeling the other party that we're not really listening to the arguments that are being presented. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm very grateful that you all came on and you shared your thoughts, and I want to be able to use these platforms to do more of this. And at some points, we just have to agree to disagree. So I just wanted to bring that up. Harry, I'd like to go ahead and put this back to you. And perhaps your thoughts on some of this, if anybody else wants to speak as well. But that fascist book banning, where, you know, anybody that is opposed to, we have a consensus that this is pornographic. But last night, if you were voicing opposition to it, you were a right-wing, homophobic, transphobic, fascist book burner. Now, I find that a bit hyperbolic based on some of the folks that I've had conversations with. You know, your thoughts on this propensity of each side to label one another the way that we are.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that both sides, this didn't exist even 10, 15 years ago, where it just goes right to the nastiness. I think Stacy dropped off.
Yeah, I told her to leave the room and jump back in.
Yeah.
You want to send her a text real quick?
Yeah. I think, no, she had a limited amount of time.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she can't.
Okay, well, while you're trying to get hold of her, see what's going on.
Heather, she had another. Go ahead.
Heather hasn't spoken yet, and she has a question for Crystal. So and Elvina. So Heather, please go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
Hi, Crystal and Elvina. I just was wanting to clarify because I believe in listening to both of you. I heard you both say that you did believe these images were pornographic. Was that true?
If I remember correctly, Crystal said that the agreement was that it was pedophilia in nature, pedophilic in nature, and
Oh, can I respond?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So are we saying porn is the depiction of people having sex, correct? Is that all it is?
That's how I look at the definition of it, yes.
Okay.
No, actually, the definition is for the purpose of creating stimulus in the right, because like if you're watching, you know, you're in a textbook and you're looking at a biological academic text, there's not an intent to titillate the audience, so that's correct. Pornographic in nature, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's why I feel I don't see the book as pornographic. I don't see it as a stimulant. Just from what I've seen, again, I haven't seen the whole book. But I still think it's depicting the Plato Symposium or whatever, which I'm not completely aware about. But considering that as a pedophilia, even if it's not technically porn, it's not intended to stimulate, it's still a depiction of someone being titillated by that thought. And I think that's not something that should be depicted like in general, not even to adults. I don't think that should be a favorable way. I don't think that's a healthy expression of sexuality. Yeah, so yeah, I don't see the book as porn.
Okay, thank you.
Can I answer as well?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely pedophilia that's weird. But I feel like the book is mainly more to educate, not like to titillate, as you guys were referring to it as. But yeah.
Well,
I have a
no,
que-
no,
I have-
no, let me stop a second here, because remember, we're not, let's not put words in our mouths. I was simply clarifying the definition of pornography. I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, okay.
No, I was just saying that I'm just saying it's not. I don't think that was that's the goal. So I don't think it's pornography.
I understand.
So I've spent a lot of time, outside my comfort zone on both sides here. Most of you think I know I'm on the right. Sam, you know me, I'm not. But would a solution to satisfy all parties be simply, since it's not really further, does that depiction even further the context or message of the book? And should they just simply provide an edited version where they don't have that section in there? Would that answer the mail?
Could I respond?
Yes.
Absolutely, please do.
No, the thing I think in the particular case of this book, no, I don't think an edited version would really matter, because it's still the same author. And if the author is drawing themselves being titillated by pedophilia, I think that's not an appropriate thing to have in a library. Even if it's edited out, it's still an author who has expressed themselves being a pedophile. And I don't think any sort of content written by a pedophile should be in a school library. Even if it's edited out, it's still the same person who made that scene, which obviously shows some sort of morality issues. So yeah, but with other books, it's a completely different story. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
We're talking the case by case basis. We're talking about genderqueer, and then I guess we might as well move the conversation about genderqueer. I think we're in agreement on that. But let's talk about Lawn Boy, about those passages. The one that I think that got most parents in uproar was the one on page 91, where there's a depiction of two 10-year-olds engaged in oral sex. Does that cross
Harry,
the
do you
line?
have that? For those
I do
that
have
may
the-
not have read it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I do have.
Here's
do
what I
have
would
it.
like to do. What I would like to do is let's put this out there. This is a wonderful conversation, by the way. Thank you, everybody, for taking part in this. Harry, why don't you take a moment and read the passage? You can provide a little bit of context if you wish, and then let's have a conversation about it.
All right, so let's have the conversation. Before I do, let me go back to the inclusion policy. I said I'm going to repeat this again just so it's fresh in everyone's mind. It's to provide students with access to a variety of resources to support their personal interests, information needs, literacy development, and academic growth, as well as to ensure that every student is able to find books to connect within their library through every book, though every book may not connect with every student, and that a book for the library must meet one of the goals. The first one is, it can be any of the three. It can to enrich and support the Fairfax County Public Schools of Studies and the Virginia Standards of Learning, to encourage and support informational and recreational reading, viewing, or listening, and help students develop the skills necessary to become lifelong learners, or to meet the information needs of students and faculty, take into consideration diverse interests, abilities, backgrounds, reading levels, maturity levels, home languages, and student extracurricular activities. So okay, it just has to be just yes to one of those three.
And notice, if I might make an observation, Harry, those are rather nebulous and vague. When I was teaching and we had specific standards that we needed to teach to, it may have been vague how you got there and the tools you used to get there, but the standards had to be and the outcomes had to be very specific.
Very sick, but you'd have to make it.
I find that very interesting.
But you have to make the argument that it says that it meets one of those three criteria for it to be there. So, this provides people to make that argument.
But so much of those criteria, my point is that it's subjective. Right. Exactly.
The problem is that within the community that there's no transparency as to how it met that criteria during the review process. That's the problem. There's been no
well, that's part
evaluation.
Of the problem. Yeah.
So,
that's part of the problem.
So okay, so then this is going to all right, I'm going to start on page 91.
So let's keep in mind that those criteria.
Those criteria. Okay. I'll start there. Okay. This goes, I'll start after on the third line. It says, it starts off, what if I told you I touched another guy's dick? I said, Piff, Nick waved me off and turned his attention back to his beer. What if I told you I sucked it? Will you please shut up already, Nick? I'm dead serious, Nick. Well, I say you're a fag. I was 10 years old, but it's true. I put Doug Goebel's dick in my mouth. The real estate guy? Yeah. Nick looked around frantically. What the fuck are you talking about, Michael? I was in 4th grade. It was no big deal. Cringing, Nick held his hands out in front of him in a yield gesture. Stop. He sucked mine too. Stop. Why are you telling me this? And you know that, I said. It wasn't terrible. All the air went out of Nick and he looked at me dully. His face a prairie of blankness. This is a joke, right? No, Nick, it's not a joke. So you're saying you're not a fag? I doubt that. It's been 12 years since I touched a dick, but that's not the point. Nick looked around, looked genuinely troubled. Averting his eyes to his beer, he looked just as thoughtful as I've ever seen him look. So wait, you said, you're like not in love with me, are you? I swear I almost punched him. Fuck no, how could I or any other guy possibly be in love with you? That's not what what is that supposed to mean? You're missing the point, Nick. Why? No, why wouldn't a guy love me? Never mind, I said, just drop it. You're wrong, asswipe. I happen to know gay guys like me. I've caught them staring at me. How'd you know they were gay? They were gay. How'd you know? They were staring at me, dipshit. It was in the city, of course. They were gay. Okay, so assuming they're gay, I said, shh, he said, glancing up down the beer. How'd it make you feel? Like kicking their asses? Come on, honestly, what did it feel like? He scratched his neck and looked vaguely in the other direction. It didn't feel anything, Michael. You were flattered, weren't you? Admit it. Fuck off. Just admit it. It really did make a difference, did it? If it was a dude or a woman, either way, you felt good about yourself. You felt wanted. You're sick. You know that? There is no way in hell you're going to make a fag out of me. Is that what you're trying to do? Is this what you think this is about? Believe me, Nick. Even if I were gay, I'd have zero interest in you. Good. You hate women. You hate Mexicans. You hate gays. I don't hate women. You hate these people because you're scared, Nick. Bullshit. Because you're insecure about your own intelligence, your own sexuality, your own measly job. Because you, and just like Nick stood up without a word and walked out of tequila. The truth is, I was glad to see him go, but still, I couldn't believe it. I've never seen him leave a picture full like that. A full picture like that. So I guess the question is, discussion is, and this is me as a parent, and maybe I'm framing the question. He's mentioning it was 10 years old. Does that cross the line? He mentioned it was 10. Does it make a difference? He says 10 or say 15 or 16. Because the 10-year-old, I can tell the parents when they say 10 years old, they're like, that's where the uproar is coming.
So are you asking our panel?
Yeah, that's just asking just the panel.
Response. Okay, Crystal.
Yeah, I just want to hear a response. Yeah.
Go ahead, Crystal. You have the floor.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, how old are the characters at? Because it seems like this character is reflecting on a past event. So how old is the character currently? Do you know?
Well, they're in this passage. They're of drinking age. They're in a bar.
Okay. See, I don't see that as porn. I don't even see that as pedophilia. I see that as a depiction of a type of pedophilia where it's like sex between two people who are underage, where, you know, I think there's definitely issues there, but I don't see how this would, I just don't see the problem with this one as much. Because he's reflecting on a past event that happened to him that, you know, I can assume that this was probably a traumatic event. Again, this is another book I haven't read in full. But yeah, it just seems like he's reflecting on a factual event, and it also doesn't seem to be a huge part of what they're talking about. Like, it's not in a titillating way like in the other book there, that person was directly masturbating to the thought of pedophilia. But this one, they're just having a conversation about something that happened in the past. That's a very real experience that happens to children. And I think, you know, middle schoolers, they still have some maturity. They can understand that sexual assault to children happens. And it doesn't seem it's depicted in a positive way. It seems more like a neutral. And I don't know. That one, it's much more of a gray area, I feel like, than the other one. I agree. I agree with you in the gray area. I think the only area that brings it into the gray area in context is the age that he's reflecting on. You know, it's below the age of consent, but I think
something just dawned on me. And let me throw this out to the group. And if there's anybody else that would like to comment on content that Harry just brought up and some of these other examples, please feel free. But I'm curious, your thoughts on, could not a potential solution to this big ruckus that continues to go on and on and on is some sort of pass system or a criteria where the books are made available but not wide open to the general public, right? So if you would want the book and you would like to check it out, that it can be dispersed to those that wish to have it. Therefore, the parents, because there are so many gray areas here, the parents or even the students that would object to this type of content, or they can feel that they're not being subjected to it, right? What would be wrong with that? How is that book burning or book banning? It's still available.
Well, I think
I'm curious.
I think that probably. So Sam, like, ask your question. Are you asking for parental consent for them to look at the books?
Well, I don't even know if it would have to be parental consent as much as just not generally out in the population.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that, because you have kids that want to hide that from their parents.
Well, I'm really,
yeah.
Well, of course, but as some of the panelists have brought up, and we all know, kids have access to anything right now. All they got to do is go on their phones and whatnot. So for me, so much of it, the issue is this really the role of the public school system to be, right? And I asked the lady last night that we interviewed in regards, because I asked her these questions as well and brought up these images, and she said that she thought it was appropriate. And I said, okay, then at what point does content in your mind no longer appropriate? Where is a line drawn? If somebody cannot express their concerns over this type of explicit content, how explicit can it get in the supporters' minds? And I would like to, I mean, does this mean, if we can allow this, then does this mean that all bets are off and there are no rules anymore? I'd love to hear thoughts on that. Okay. No, meaning no to that there shouldn't be any rules anymore and that anything goes?
No, what I'm saying is that's kind of a slippery slope. I don't really see.
Well, we're on the slippery slope. I think we're already there, as we're literally hundreds of people coming out to school board meeting after school board meeting. We've went down that slope already.
Well, we're literally talking about the rules. Isn't that the whole point? And we just said that the thing in the last book was not appropriate and this one is.
Right. No, I'm not. You did.
Well, I wouldn't. I would say
to a lot of the folks that are out there, however, that are not being as articulate about their arguments or reasonable as you've been, Crystal. Okay. Go ahead, Harry.
Crystal, I would agree that with the other book with Lawn Boy, that if you change the age of the character in the depiction from 10 to an age of legal consent, that certainly meets that threshold, to be in there. But does anybody have a problem with the depiction being that they're 10 at that age? Or am I just off base on there?
See, I don't see a problem with the depiction. I see a problem that happens. Like, I don't think 10-year-old kids should be having sex, but it is a thing that happens. No matter if it's in this book or not, no matter if it's banned or not, it's a thing that happens. And pedophilia is a problem that happens. And there are children who will be victims of pedophilia. And what I assume about this book is that they will see a sort of connection with that maybe they experienced something like that when they were younger. Maybe they were traumatized. I don't know. But the point of books is that people will comprehend them, like relate to the experience. So I don't see how this, I don't know. But it doesn't seem like this is intended to encourage other kids to do this. It seems it's simply a reflection, because children know about sex. They know about sucking dicks, whatever they were talking about. no matter if it's in this book or not. It's not, I just don't see how a conversation like that, which is simply a reflection on past trauma, would encourage children to do this, which I assume is the concern, that their
Well, I
children
get-
would engage in the same behavior.
Well, I guess the question I would have is that if these books are down to the level where they're in 11 years old, and this is an adult conversation, so we're talking about this information critically. Can an 11-year-old appreciate this in context? And I'll just talk about, like, from a parent's concern.
Mhm.
If a child's 11 years old and there's a depiction of that in this book, and if you look at the book out of context, it doesn't show that's clearly that's like, well, it does kind of go to a flashback. But if it's 11-year-old and they're like, okay, if somebody touches me here, does that depiction push physical and sexual boundaries of an 11-year-old that's not necessarily appropriate for their maturity level? Because I mean, this book made it into secondary schools. We're not talking high school. We're talking like elementary. We're talking middle school. So I mean, is there a line where you, if you do have it, do you move it out of middle school? Do you put it in high school libraries?
I don't know, because that is a good point. Like, maybe this would be better for high schools. But I don't know. I think I would have to read the whole book to be completely sure of my answer, to understand this character, because like to understand the nuance of it. Because I've seen movies that have depicted, like, not the literal sexual assault of children, but it's kind of implied or heavily implied, like Mysterious Skin, which is a very popular movie that addresses this subject in a very mature way. But also, I wouldn't show that movie to middle schoolers, because it is graphic, and it is very traumatic too. It depicts very sad things that happen. So I think, yeah, I don't know. For middle school, I guess it's harder, but I feel like if I read this in middle school, I would be able to understand it, but I know that's not the same situation for everyone.
Well, Sam, I mean, we've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'd like to go ahead and wrap this up. Is there anybody? There's some folks on here that we haven't heard from. Is there anybody that would like to get their viewpoint across, or just quick comment? You are more than welcome, and we are listening. Please feel free to unmute yourselves and jump in the conversation.
Can I just say one last thing? I have to leave, but I just wanted to make one last comment. Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Sorry, give me 1 second. I have something going on with my mic.
We hear you. Oh, okay. Well, while we're waiting on Elvina, is there anybody else that would like to make a quick comment?
Oh, I actually had a question.
Yes.
Is the book It by Stephen King in your middle school library? Do you know?
Nope. We did bring that up. It is in the it is in the, I can bring it up. I know it's in the high school library. Let me bring up, I can have the search right now. But yeah, it's we were talking about that earlier before you joined.
Okay. Because I think that's a book that depicts a sex act between children in a way that's not, not in the same way as this Lawn Boy. It seems like that one's intended for titillation, in my opinion.
So context is very important.
Extremely.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate that. And we've said that on our various shows as well.
We did.
There's a Stacy in her trailer here. She set that up that, if there are books that are out there, not to say that we're going to run around, making bonfires here, but, the argument is, hang in there. Elvina, hang in there. We've got a TV blaring in the background, so I'm going to mute you for a second. But the point being is that if you'd like to come on the show and have a rational discussion about any of this stuff, and you want to bring to light any other books that are out there, whether they're depicting heterosexual or homosexual or scenarios, whatever the case may be. Elvina, just keep yourself muted for a moment, please. Okay? Just please keep yourself muted for a moment. Then, okay, go ahead. Elvina, you have the floor.
your rhetoric. Give me now, give me now. My eyes think about me like a gorgeous savage. Everybody look at me.
Is that your comment, Elvina? Okay. So if you
Yes.
have other books that you are concerned about, then please, in the interest of discussion, bring that up. Anybody else with a closing comment?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for coming at this with an open mind and actually listening and understanding, because I was having problems with Stacy because it felt like she was coming from it, like I said, from a bigoted perspective. And I know I don't want to, I know that is a form of name calling, but that is just what I got from her comments. But I appreciate what you're, how you guys are sharing your views in a very respectful and open-minded way. Because I feel like we are able to have a much more productive conversation without her, to be honest.
Oh, we all have our rights to our opinions, and that's what we're trying to do here. And Harry, you brought up, you had mentioned that, folks are starting to label you as a right winger because of some of your positions, and me too. I mean, I'm very much a libertarian hippie at heart. I lean conservative on some issues, but I'm not a right-wing zealot by any stretch of the imagination. But last night we were book burning fascists.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys.
I got labeled that way because I started criticizing some of the diversity efforts, which I saw as nothing more than racial profiteering. But that's
there you go. And you know what?
That's
Harry.
Next, yeah.
Why don't I wanted to give you an opportunity to plug the next forum that we're going to be doing on the 11th. That's going to be bringing a lot of those issues to light.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead, Harry?
So next week's is going to be a special. It's going to be a barbershop special. So. And that's the highlight when I talk about when you hear a lot of talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm really going to be calling out just like the fraudulent, a lot of activists that we're hearing that are saying they're pro-diversity. They absolutely have no presence in the Black community. They don't. I mean, I do. I go there on a regular basis. I help organize programs. So so next week I'm actually going to have Black educators. I'm actually going to have it's going to be in front of the Black community, and we're going to talk about education issues in Fairfax County and what some of the problems are, where things need to change, and with some other opportunities that are open. And I'm going to have an open discussion for those that know me that are just livid. They're like, how could you support Youngkin? And I'm going to talk about that. Like because I'm a single issue voter, I started looking at education and seeing what the policies were. And I'll have that open discussion. And again, I'm going to let all challengers come at me, just as everyone had the chance to go take their crack at Stacy. But that's going to be on the 11th. We're going to have that at 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the morning.
In the morning.
And if you want to, please sign up on our Facebook page, like us, whatever, go to novanow.tv, take a subscription, whatever level that you wish to do so. There's free one there, or you can subscribe to support what we're doing too. But then you'll get notifications for all these things. So I think, this was wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity to share, and we will be doing more of this in the future. For novanow.tv, I'm Sam Otero and
Harry Jackson. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for next Saturday. And I should clarify, he said 9 o'clock. It's actually 9 in the morning. We're going to be doing that open forum. All right, folks, thank you so much. You have a wonderful evening. Stopping the recording now.